Welcome to season 13 of the Parenting Aces podcast, a proud member of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week I have with me developmental coach Aaron Rusnak, who comes to us from the Chicago area. Aaron and I have been connected on social media for a while and recently made a telephone connection, and I'm super excited for you guys to get to hear him talk about how junior tennis coaching has changed since he's been in the game and how he has adapted as a coach to compensate for that, and the different things that he does when he's working with players and their families. So I'm excited for y'all to get to hear from him. I want to just say I had the most fabulous time at Easter Bowl. For those of you who caught last week's episode, I hope that came through. It was such a great experience, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to get to be out there and talk to all these people that I got to chat with, meet some of you for the first time, reconnect with old friends. It's always a pleasure to be in person. And I can't wait for the next tournament. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but if there's a tournament in the SoCal area that you guys are traveling to or going to be at, please let me know. I would love to come out and watch your child and shake hands and say hello. Also, just one quick reminder, we are trying to make a push to get our YouTube channel subscriptions up. So if you haven't become a subscriber yet, if you go on YouTube and search Parenting Aces, you will find us, or if you go on parentingaces.com, there's a link at the top. Click that subscribe button. We're just trying to build those numbers up. If you're not following us on our other social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, please make sure to follow us there. Again, it's just at Parenting Aces. And if you are considering a subscription to our website to become a premium member, we would love to have you. I would love to set up that one-on-one consult with you and talk about your child's journey and what I can do to help you navigate through that. So again, go on our website. All the information's there. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Coach Aaron Rusnak. It's so nice to have you on, Aaron. I feel like we've known each other for a while just because of our social media connection, but we've never met in person, kind of like a lot of people that I have on the podcast that I feel like you guys are friends, but like we haven't had that opportunity yet. But welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for having me today. I really appreciate your time and asking me to come on. I appreciate it.
Well, you send me such valuable information that I then go and share, and it's the social media connection has become such an important part of our world, but specifically junior tennis, and having input from different coaches and people who've been in the game as long as you have, I think is so helpful, not just for me. I'm continually trying to learn and broaden my horizons, but also, for families that are new to the sport, and having that experience and all is just invaluable. So I'm excited to jump into our conversation. And I want to just start the way I start with every new guest to the podcast, and that is to ask you to give us a little bit of your tennis story. How did you get started in the game?
Okay. I started playing tennis when I was about 9 years old, and I actually was a basketball player. Started playing basketball when I was 2, but lo and behold, my mom was watching. Actually, it was Wimbledon on TV back in the '90s, and when Agassi had his pink racket, Dane racket, and crazy hair, and I was like, man, this looks like a really cool sport. And at that time, also, I didn't even know my mom played. And so, I was all playing multiple sports, never played tennis. And I was like, I want to try this. And I tried one summer and I just fell in love with it. And it was basically, a battle between basketball and tennis. And eventually I really just fell in love with, probably by the time I was going into high school, probably, in that summer going into high school was when I made the full commitment to only tennis, because it was just like tennis has so many good life lessons. Not that basketball doesn't. It's just that I think that kind of like in life, sometimes you're by yourself, and you learn those, like, life skills of how to, when you get knocked down, how to pick yourself up, how to, basically, as you know, in a tennis match, there's a lot of problem solving. So in life, there's a lot of problem solving. And I just fell in love with so many things that the game brings. brings out in you, makes you, the more you basically go into it more, the more I feel like you better yourself. And, you just keep growing, become a better version of yourself. And I think that this sport, does that, and it at least did it for me. So yeah, it started then. And then, what was kind of funny was probably when I was going into high school, right before high school, also, I started teaching tennis. So, my very first tennis teacher, she was a special education teacher in Chicago public schools. Her name was Sharon Toomey, and she just saw how much I loved helping others from a very young age, and came to my mom and dad one day after a lesson besides saying, I think he has a really bright future playing tennis, but I really think anything he does, if it's not tennis related, or if it is tennis related, anything in the way of serving others, she's like, he'll be exceptional at it. So yeah, I really started coaching at a very young age, started to learn a lot of things that way. And then fast forward, yeah, I went through high school. I didn't play high school tennis. I played 11 matches. I take that back, 11 matches as a high school player. And pretty much my high school team taught all my high school players how to play tennis, because where I went to school, it was not a very strong team. We did have a strong individual, but he actually graduated the year I came in as a freshman. So it would have been nice if I was either a year older or he was a year younger. So we would have played, doubles together. Because for me, I grew up, I was number one in the area for doubles for my age division in that 16s and 18s. With like, at that time, you could be ranked with multiple players. So I was like 11 different players at the time. And yeah, and then after high school, I was teaching full time, and my dream was to play on the circuit. And then back in 2002, that's when I started my journey there. And I played futures for 6 years. I played a couple of challengers. Really just grateful. I came through actually in juniors, so I don't forget it. I actually came through Arthur Ashe Foundation through the NJTL program. That's actually I started in tennis.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so yeah, so they actually supported me when I was 13. So not to jump backwards, but just to kind of piggyback up into my dream. But yeah, I had a lot of fortunate people in my life when I was very young that believed in me, my abilities in that. And NJTL, they gave me a big break. I got to go to Escondido, California, in '95, and trained at the San Diego tennis facility there. Actually, was in San Diego, and trained for 2 weeks with some of the best coaches at the time in California, with multiple coaches from different sectionals and regions and out of the country who came there to train us for 2 weeks. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I got the most valuable player award there, but it was something that I love. I love SoCal very much. It's my home away from home outside of where I live here. But yeah, fast forward, then yeah, I played futures, and then after I stopped playing tennis, at the professional level, I still played like local tournaments and nationals and money events, but it was really just solely dove into teaching tennis full time, as my career for the rest of my life. So.
And what is it specifically about teaching tennis to kids that calls to you?
I My thing is, I feel that anyone, not just myself, but anyone who's passionate about something, in this case me, I'm really passionate about the game. I feel you can change lives. I feel like, I had a conversation actually with a parent actually literally 2 days ago, and was like, I've been trying to repeat what you say, but they won't listen to me, but they'll always listen to you. And I just told him, I said, you can just be dad and let me be coach. I said, if there's something you got questions, let's us talk. I'm like, but if there's anything, like, even if there's something that you're worried about or concerns, just come to me about it. Don't let them worry about it. Let them just focus on the process of their game. And I said, and we'll work through that. So I really fell in love with how much of an impact you can make in these young kids' lives. Whether it's little kids I was working with that are just picking up a racket for the first time and just trying to get the joy and how much excitement that the game can bring to their life, or when as a college coach, having the opportunity to work with young adults and really, spend those years, hours and hours, and get to really see all the time you do with team practices, in, one-on-one practices, semi-privates, fitness training. I also did the fitness training at the facility, at the university I was at. So I did a fitness portion too. So I got to track everyone's improvements and how they're improving, and you form a bond with them. And or you go back to like before my college years, having kids that I had who were, in high school looking to get into college, and me helping them through the college process, and how that can be very stressful for the parents as much as the kids in that, and trying to kind of be the middle person to try to, make it where it works for the parents, and also the kids get into a place that they really feel that they're going to be comfortable the next 4 years or beyond, or whether, want to go to school for. But yeah, I really just love seeing people improve. I've always been an advocate, and I know if it's because of my basketball years, I always tell coaches it's never been about me. It's about the helping the parents and helping the kids. If the kid's succeeding, then tennis is winning. If like my way of I always looked at it like coaching wise, when I was a director at one of my facilities, I had like 40 full-time staff pros and overseeing a lot of over 1,300 kids at one of my facilities that many years ago. And my thing was, of that program, I had almost 700 kids of the program were in my own individual program. So that's a lot of kids, a lot of personalities, a lot of parents to take care of. And, it's a lot of intensive when you're on the court 10 plus hours a day and still having emails and phone calls and having parent meetings to make sure that in the program itself they're getting help. But I always want to make sure it's a team atmosphere. So even my own program, when I was doing that at the old club I was at many years ago, I always had all my pros that were working in my program always be part of the team. So what I mean by this, like if I was teaching a class and even though I'm the director, even though I have the title, I didn't treat myself that way. I wanted everyone, all the kids, to respect every pro that worked with me, not just me, that everyone had something to give to them and that they needed their full attention and respect to them too. And that came also to the parents too, to understand just because I'm the director doesn't mean that I'm the only one that can make their child succeed. I'm the only one to come take privates from, that everybody has something to offer. So I was really about diversifying and making sure that my staff that I had under me understood it was all about the kids and understand that I respect what they're doing and I appreciate their time that they're donating. They're basically, in my eyes, donating their time to be involved in my program and trying to make it really, really well. And in return, the kids see how much we all care about them, and it's a win then because the kids then, basically, as you know, when you get around in a really good environment, the kids are excited, the kids want to learn, the parents are happy because they see their kids learning and improving. It's like a win-win. We get to see the kids growing, and the parents get to see it, and the kids get to see it, and they believe in themselves. So I think it becomes like a good like harmony, of an environment that you can create. But that's just always kind of been my motto all these years. Even when I work with other coaches that maybe I don't even know that well, or I see some of their kids, it's like I've never been one. For example, I don't go to a tournament, and if I have a parent saying, "Oh, what do you think of my kid?" the very first thing I always say is, "Well, what's your coach working on them?" And a lot of times if the coach is there, and then sometimes coaches will say, "Hey, what do you think of my kid?" And that like we're trying to help each other out for the good cause of the game. Because the way I look at it is, if we as coaches work together or clubs work together, and that tennis survives, tennis thrives that way. But if we put like I'm better than you, like this whole monopoly of trying to take everyone out, it just that's where I feel that's when we lose out, and that's what breaks my heart because at the end of the day like I always tell my kids, they always say, "Oh, well, you helped me get here." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a guide, but really and truly, you're the one to hit the ball. You're the one to make the decisions. It's your success. I'm not going to sit here and ride on your coattails and say, "Oh, I'm this great coach." No, you did the things. I'm just blessed that you were willing to listen to the things that I taught you or gave advice to. Whether it was when I was a college coach or in the junior times. And even like I am now as a junior full-time coach.
So let's talk a little bit about what's changed in junior tennis and specifically junior coaching. Before we started recording, you and I were talking offline about the fact that you were recently at a coaching conference and that you had the opportunity to chat with some of your peers from around the country. And you're all seeing some of the same challenges come up. Can you kind of elaborate on some of those things that have changed and how coaches are having to adapt in order to continue to coach effectively and help these kids in the best way possible?
Yeah, I think one thing, there's a couple of things. One of my biggest advocates, at least from my, like we'll say my own teaching philosophy, we all have our own philosophy. The one thing is the greatest thing we can do as a coach is listen. I was telling you offline, and as like, if I'm working with you, as I was saying before, if I understand you as a person, a human being, and understand how you learn and how you take in information, that's how I'm going to best service you. If I'm like bent on my ways, like this is how it's going to be done, and you do it this way or else, there's a small percentage that you're going to help that way. And that's something like when I was saying it was at the PTR symposium, talking to a lot of these coaches from different states and in some ways some other countries as well that flew in for the conference, and it's all across the world. One of the biggest things I think we as coaches all talked about while we were there was the challenge of keeping the kids engaged, keeping them engaged, Also not having them, there's so many kids, that chase like, what my UTR is and that, and it's like, and I told them, I said, with my own personal kids, and, we all would give our own advice or things that we would say to our own kids. And I always tell my kids, I'm like, I don't care about the UTR. I'm not worried about your ranking, because if you embrace the process and you work on the things that you should be, and you be disciplined in doing it, those things will take care of itself. And, I was telling a lot of,
Amen.
yeah,
Amen.
yeah. And I just told him, I said, yeah, I was telling some of the coaches, I said, when I stopped coaching colleges, right when UTR first came out. So I was still using like your regular USTA rankings, like your tennisrecruiting.com, like all this stuff. I was into that stuff still, what star the kid was and so on and so forth when I was recruiting. I said, but I said, some of these kids some kids have so much anxiety and stress over like, oh, if I lose here, I'm going to do this. I'm like, don't worry about the winning and losing. Just focus on like what I'm asking you to work on. Go and do it the best of your ability. If you lose, you're going to learn. If you win, you're still supposed to learn something from it. Whether you win or losing, you should take something away to be grateful that you have an opportunity to see where am I at now and where can I go from here. And I said that's the great thing, because as we've talked before, and that I love Jay Watt does a great job with the analytics stuff. I'm a big believer of that. Andy Durham, Durham is amazing with the racket stats. I use his stuff as well. I really believe, I was telling the coaches there, I said, I use racket stats. I'll use, swing vision. I'll use even like a lot of my kids, I'll have them do like private YouTube channels where they'll record their matches and send them to me. So at night after I'm done working, probably when I should be sleeping, I'm watching video and seeing what stuff is. But at the same time, not just me watching it, but I also want the kids to watch it too. So when I come back with like kind of bullet points of things to take away from it, I want them to see what they saw in the match too, and compare to kind of what I'm seeing. So not even just using the analytics, just overall just watching the match and saying, hey, what are you seeing, what are you not seeing? Because one thing I at least know in my years of teaching this game, the one thing that's never I felt ever changed with kids is they're always visual. So there's some visual component, a visual or feel component that kids, a sensory thing that they can pick up on and understand. In this case, if you're using video, sometimes I have one boy where I'll have him watch a video and then sometimes when he first started doing this, I just see that he would immediately pick out like, oh, I'm just not good at all the negative things. And I said, no, I want you to pick out, with this one boy, I had to say, no, I want you to pick out the positive things that you saw yourself doing. Let's look at the positive things first. I'm not saying that we don't talk about the negative things, but we got to look at the things you were doing right. And what are the things that from things you were doing right, what could you have done better to be more maybe disciplined or focused in those situations to continue doing those things and not fall backwards into, maybe bad body language, maybe a bad court positioning, maybe where you're aiming was not appropriate at the time. I had a lesson of mine. This is like 6 months ago. The dad came to me. He's like, went to this level 3 tournament. And he's like, my son's backhand was really, 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 really bad. And he's like, and normally it's a really consistent shot for him. And I said, well, did you take the video? And that, like I asked, and he's like, yes, send me the video. And what happened is this boy technically was not wrong. He was making the wrong shot selection. He had a ball that's landing average 6 to 8 inches from the baseline. He's trying to fire it flat down the line. And every time he's hitting the ball a little wide or long, I'm like, it's not that his stroke was wrong. His decision was not the right time. It was not the ball to go for. The line looked open when it really wasn't open. And these are things like I talked to with these coaches at the symposium was like, the kids, as far as even talking to them, I told them, I said, for me personally, when I'm listening to the kids, if I understand that I can have a good conversation with them and can kind of really have, we'll say, a deep conversation, I'll go there. If they're a kid that I realize that I have a couple kids who are kind of fidgety and, so I know that whatever I say has to be very impactful in a small amount of time and let it register. The other thing that I learned actually, and I was sharing this to a lot of the coaches when I was there, when we were talking about, coaching and challenging the way things are now. I said, one way I learned, and actually this is not mine, this is actually Emma Doyle said this to me probably 3 years ago. And it really resonated with me because one of my things when I talk to coaches, I really kind of digest and redigest it a while just to kind of understand everyone's perspective. And one of the things she said to me one time, she goes, have you ever done a lesson and asked nothing but questions? And I was like, man, that's actually a good question. I'm thinking there and I'm like, yeah, I've done it. But I know there's a few times where I have to like come in and say, hey, do you know that this is happening or whatever it may be? And it really kind of opened my eyes to a different way of coaching, besides my listening component that I've always used. But with that listening component tied in, I was telling the coaches what I started doing is every time the kids would make an error, instead of me immediately going, "Oh, this happened," or "Look at how your footwork was here," or whatnot, I would say, "What did you feel? What do you think happened there?" And then you'd be surprised how many times they actually can figure it out on their own. And I was telling the coach, I said, the one thing is really our job as coaches is to educate them so they can survive on their own. I said this to one parent. This was last year. Actually, it was not one of my own students. It was actually another parent of one that takes lessons from one of the other coaches at one of the facilities I work at. And the parent's always on the sideline, and he's always like coaching almost over the coach at times. And I'm watching this go on. And at one point, there was a tournament at the facility I was working at, and he was like, my kid's not doing this right, not doing that right. I got to talk to him about this, and I said, I said to him, I said, in all respect, I said, one, let if you believe in your coach, let him coach. I said, if I go and don't be afraid to let your kid fail. I know as a parent, I'm a parent, like you don't want to see your kid fail. I said, but if he fails, he's gonna learn because what's hopefully is gonna happen, because I got to know this boy over time. I said, with his behavior and mentality, he seems like if he does fail, he's gonna ask those questions of why, and he's going to think about it, and he's going to take it back to the next time he practices, whether he talks to his own coach or he goes back and hits on the ball machine or he plays another practice match. I think the way he perceives, or even when I've asked him questions and it was on group class that I would see him and I would say, if you ask him questions, he knows what's going on. I think it's just a matter of more of just believing in himself to execute. I said, but I go, if you constantly are just saying you're not doing this, or you're constantly trying to coach him, I said, you're actually handicapping him, because he's then just relying on you giving him information or the coach giving him information. I'm like, sometimes it's the hardest thing to do is, but sit back and let them see what they understand about their game and what they don't understand. I said, because then that can create even greater talking points, as opposed to some nuanced things that really maybe didn't really make the difference in the match that you feel that's what it was. When it's other things that were more important to be talking about, that could be much more impactful for not just that moment, but long-term journey for that individual's development. So I had that talk with a parent, like I said, it was like 2 weeks ago. And like I said, and obviously it was not one of my own students in that, but the dad started talking to me while I was waiting for one of my students, and we just got in this conversation, and he just said to me, he's like, you don't seem like you coach a lot, you have a lot of energy, but he goes, you just seems like you pick the moments. And I said, I pick moments according to how my student is. I said, some kids need a little more feedback than others. I said, but when they compete, I said, I say nothing other than if it's absolutely something just keeps happening over and over again. I said, I'm not going to sit there and watch them for 30 minutes, keep doing something wrong. I said, I'm obviously going to say, hey, did you notice this? But I'm going to ask questions first. I'm going to say, hey, what do you think's going on? What do you think? And of course, with a lot of kids, I find over the years, I think it's not completely changed, but one of the things I've noticed over the years is, if you ask the kids, oh, what do you think's happening? They immediately go to themselves. They're like, oh, I have terrible backhand. I'm doing this. But I'm like, are you thinking about what your opponent's doing to you? And are you paying attention to the other side of that? They're telling you a story, what they like, what they don't like, maybe what they're doing to you that you're having trouble with. Maybe you're not understanding that this is what they're doing and you're recognizing it. So it's sometimes, like I said, that's a great teachable moment when you have a video, because you can say, hey, look at 4 all, 30 all, this particular point. You didn't play a bad point, but this particular pattern, the person keeps playing, but you keep falling in the trap and doing this. And then when you show the video, then they go, oh, they have that aha moment, like, oh yeah, that's right. Like next time if I play that person or someone similar, they might actually think about a different way how they're going to go about it. So like I said, that's something. When I was at the symposium, we talked about also the other issues, the cell phones. Some of these kids, are completely glued to the cell phone, like on a changeover, they're immediately going on, whatever social platform, or texting, and they're like, and for me, my kids know, like, I have like a no cell phone policy where, like, when we're in the lesson, I'm like, because they always laugh at me. They're like, you're never on your phone. And I said, no, I said, I'm dating myself. I said, but I was teaching in the 90s. I go, there was a cell phone, but not the way it is now. I go, the way it worked, I said, I would always tell my kids, the way it worked is, when I would teach an 8-hour day or 12-hour, whatever hour a day, I had no phone on me. It was just me and you. I said, now there's things to be distracted. I said, but I want you to learn is that if I have you for an hour, I have no phone on me, because I'm fully invested in you. And I said, so when you're on your phone, I said this one kid a couple of years back, I said, when you go on your phone, and I'm trying to engage with you. I said, I'm here for you. It's not for me, it's for you. So when you're on your phone, that's, to me, it's being disrespectful because you're not respecting my time nor respecting your own time. I said, or your parents' money. I said, just not a win-win situation altogether.
Yeah.
So that was something that we talked about, in the conference, was like a lot of the kids, and not just here, like we had some guys from, Italy and Sweden that all chime in the same thing, that, the kids, like, as soon as there's a break, going to get water, immediately get on the phone. And one of my friends I know where I live, at one of the midtowns up north where I work in at, literally has it now where he has all the kids put all their cell phones in an empty cart and locks it, and they can't get it out until the end of group class. And I told him, I said, I love it. I said, it's not like I'm a torturous person. I said, but then they're engaged with us as coaches, but they also can be engaged in a, within a, like we'll say a family feel or team feel with everyone else. I think you're more involved because I think we as human beings, we do best when we interact with each other, not be glued to something the whole time and disconnect from everyone. So that was like one of the big things that we've seen, especially as cell phones have become more, we'll say, smartphones. That's been a challenge. And the more social media platforms now with the TikTok and Instagram, it's just more things for the kids. And I remember one of my colleagues in it said that there was a study that came out, I think a couple of years ago, that, with kids nowadays, because if you look at like Instagram, all the videos are very short. So it's training them to have short attention spans. And the hardest thing is, in tennis, we can't have short attention spans. If you have a 5+ ball rally, that's going to be more than that 10 seconds a lot of times, depending upon, the level and pace. So it's like, you have to be engaged in what you're trying to do. How do you problem solve, and, stuff like that. So yeah, that was a big talking point for a lot of us. And, and I just told him, I said, for me, it's like my own students know, like, no cell phone, it's not that I'm trying to be mean. It's just, let's respect each other's time, respect mom and dad's money, and let's make the most of our time, and, I said, for me, I told him, I said, it always works well. And, some of the coaches are like, yeah, some of the kids just like, well, I just want my phone on me. And I'm like, I tell them, like, my kids, I'm like, if there's, if you want to have your phone on you, fine. But like when we're having a lesson though, don't pick up the phone. Like, I'm not doing it. Like, I even tell the kids, I'm like, think about it. I said, even when I've done like stuff on Instagram or I do stuff on LinkedIn for like videos with some of my kids, it's never during a lesson time. So whenever I shoot video, it's always after our time. And I have like a free period. I'm like, hey, do you want to shoot a video real quick? Whether I'm talking about something or we demonstrate a drill, I'm not doing it during their time because that's not time for me to be doing that. That's wasted time from what they need to be doing themselves. So I said, there's a disconnect. I said, if I'm going to take my phone out, and the same thing I was telling, I tell the kids this. I said, I don't have my phone on me. I said, if there's an emergency, my parents are older. My parents and my wife know if there's a God forbid an emergency, they call the front desk of my club, and then somebody from the club calls. Then I know I now have to pick up my phone because now it's something that's an emergency. But other than that, my phone is gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's one thing. The other thing too is I think, with the kids too that we talked about is since UTR came out, we've seen like a big shift. And it's like there's positive things from UTR. Don't get me wrong, but I think there are so many kids, especially with the social media aspect, they're always looking at other players. And as you know, they always look at like the grass is greener on the other side, and oh, this kid's doing this and this kid's doing that. And I'm like, you're just filtrating your brain with things that I don't want to say is an illusion, but you don't know the whole story of that
Right.
post. It's like I posted something a couple of weeks ago on my own feed. And someone wrote something really nice about me, and I said, whether I post something that someone wrote nice or or you post a drill with some kid or whatnot, it's only a snippet. You'll never get a full understanding of the real player's struggles, their challenges, their accomplishments, or how good the coach really is, compared to another coach, or how invested they are in their players or not. It's hard to say that in a post. You can make a post look really, really great, but they maybe are only in it for that one post to get a ton of views. But are they doing the other stuff that really the kid needs and the parents need you to be doing? It's like looking at those things. Are they really taking the time and caring about them outside of that, social media platform? And
Yeah.
then we had a lot of us talked about that too, where there was like a lot of, somebody had said that there was a lot of smoke and mirrors, sometimes it's going
Yeah.
on social platforms and that. And sometimes, kids can also misunderstand like proper technique or certain, there's a lot of different things that are out there. And, and I just told them, I said, for me personally, it's like, I just focus on the person across the net for me. Anything that's going on social media, I let it go. I'm like, I don't know if it's my age, but I don't get caught up into like wanting to get into these battles with other players or coaches or like whatever. They do their thing, I'll do my thing. And it's like, I just want to make sure that my players know I care about them, and my parent, and the parents know I'm invested in their kid, and I care about them. And those that I've talked to when I was there, they all felt the same way. It's like, as long as you're doing the right things and the parents know your heart's in the right place and the kids know that, you always get the best out of the kids, and you always get the parent support because they know that you're really putting the effort. Where I think I think the one other thing I will say real quick is I think the thing that has always been there, but it's getting more intense too because of, I'm sorry to say again, the UTR, but with the UTR stuff, it's sometimes the parents are getting obsessed about that. So they're putting pressure on the kid. And then the kid is like, oh my God, if I drop these 2 games, then this is going to happen. And they start freaking out. And I have, like, for example, I have a couple of kids right now that are, right now they made their college videos and we're talking to colleges. And, I had a girl this last year commit to UPenn, but I know she was stressed out, with her stuff and that. And I just told them, like, I'm like, you have to ride the wave. You have a bad match. You have a bad match. You learn. We all do. I mean, look at the other day. Dimitrov beating Alcaraz. It happens. Dimitrov played amazing. Alcaraz. Obviously gave credit when credit's due. I think it's just one of those things. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, you're the better player that day. And like I always tell my players, if you lose to a lesser player, that doesn't diminish you as who you are as a person. It's just, as a player, you're learning something about yourself that day, and you take it forward. And I know sometimes if we get into situations where we're losing often, sometimes it's because you're learning to work on a new skill. And sometimes you have to work through it before it kind of meshes with the rest of your game. But when it does, it really elevates your game. So.
Well, and I want to just piggyback on what you're saying about UTR. And I say this, when I meet with families one-on-one, good college coaches know to look at stuff other than just a metric. They're not just looking at UTR and making a decision whether or not they want your kid on their team based on that one number. They're looking at a whole host of factors, trying to decide if your child is the best fit for their team and if their team is the best fit for your child. So if a coach tells you that, oh, your UTR is such and such, yeah, we want you, that's not a good coach. You want that coach to have done research and gotten to know your kid and understand your child's learning style and playing style and what their needs are and what they're looking for out of a college experience. So, beware
Absolutely.
of that.
Absolutely. I mean, even when I was a college coach, I was a college coach a few times as assistant. And then when I was a head coach, when I came in, I did not inherit a full men's team. And the women's team was, and we have full 9 players on the women's team. But the one thing I did, the team remembers, was the very first day I got to meet the team, I actually gave them a questionnaire just to see how well they knew their game. Because it's like, first and foremost, they have to understand how they play. Because most of these people, I have to understand, again, like you said, I have to understand how they learn. I have to understand their personality, who to say more to than others, or when to let them be. As you know yourself, and you see players, some players, there are certain players after a match, they come off the court and they want feedback right away. Some players, they want to be left alone for a few hours and they want to decompress. And then some don't want to talk until the next day. And there's not one of them is right or wrong. It's just you have to go according to the player. And like you said with the coaching thing, the one thing that when I was recruiting, it wasn't just about the UTR. It wasn't even about the ranking. My other thing that you brought up a very good point was I would always want to talk to the kid and learn about their academics. I want to learn about like how they came about. I even asked them, how did they learn? When did they start playing tennis? Why did they play tennis? Because I want to know also, are they playing for themselves or are they playing for mom or dad? Because you see it time and time again. And this thing, it breaks my heart, is you see certain kids, for as long as I've been doing this, who have really amazing talent to go in a certain trajectory. And then you see right around 15 years old or so, sometimes the flame starts to dissipate down because the pressure is building too much, because you have so many people, oh, you could be amazing, you could be amazing. And then the parents get hopped into it. And then other people in their camp get into it. And it's like, all of a sudden, it's just like, it's a lot, it's a lot for them to digest. Their brain's not fully developed. They're just trying to take it all in. And the next thing you know, you have a kid dropping out of tennis, or they don't really reach their potential because of those factors. And as a coach, it's really hard to sit there and see that, because it breaks your heart. Because at least I know for myself as a coach, all I want to do is anyone I get a chance to teach tennis to is have them fall in love with the game like I am. I'm so passionate my whole entire life, and just want to keep playing for their life. Whether they're a Division 1 player, Division 3, or they play NAIA, or they go on to play something much greater. I would love to see, like for example, for myself, because I've been doing it for 27 years. You know, one of my greatest things for me as a coach is when I have kids who I had 25 years ago, for example, call me up, and then they have kids now, and their kids play tennis with them. Like that means so much to me that one, they still talk to me because they looked at me more than just a tennis coach, but they also tell me like they're playing with their kids. Like, their kids are playing tennis, and they're asking me questions like, well, I remember when I was little, you started me when I was 9 years old, but now my kid wants to play and they're only 5 years old. So what racket do I use? Like just basic questions. But, you know, that stuff gets me excited to know that we're keeping the game going. We're keeping, not just myself, but any coach that's doing it, and having that type of connection with your players is so vital. But the other thing I don't want to forget about is like when I'm talking to these kids, and a lot of times, when they come for visits, whether it's official or unofficial visits, I try to also find out how coachable the kids are. Because there are some kids that you will see that are extremely talented, but they're very bent on their ways and they're not coachable. And I personally ran into that as a head coach. My we'll say 1 through 5 players, my 2 through 5, very very coachable. Worked hard in practice. My number 1 guy, he did work hard in practice. Very good guy. It just when things would go south, I would try to help him come up with some resolutions to the situation. And all he wanted to do is just try to hit through the guy, whoever he's playing. And, that was the hardest thing, was trying to get him. It took me almost the whole entire year there to get him to understand, like, there's more than when things go south, pardon me, just to hit through somebody, because he had a really, really massively big forehand and he would rely on that. But I'm like, some of these guys would sit back, 5, 10 feet behind the baseline, and then just use his pace and redirect, and eventually he'd overhit. And but he was very, very, very at the very beginning of our relationship, as head coach to my number 1 player. That was a challenging time because his behavior also wasn't great. Bad behavior. And for me personally, any of my students know in all my years, I'm very big on being a gentleman in the sport. That was the whole purpose of tennis, is being a gentleman in the sport. And so it's like you conduct yourself, you compete, but you compete in a respectful way, not using foul language, breaking rackets, or being disrespectful to the other player or other coaches nearby. So, that was something I had to work with this player too, these situations that you're going through, it's okay to be stressed. It's understandable to go through these things. It's a stressful environment, but how you always have a choice on how you're going to react. You can take that moment, it's like Mel Robbins says, count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's like, that's like an example of like one way just to disconnect the brain, to shut off for a minute. It's like, I love that one. I've told kids that one. I'm like, I like that one. It's a very simple one, and it does work, and it gets kids in. But obviously that wasn't used back then, it's just, but it is challenging, and also you get to, with those visits, you get to, meet also the parents. So you kind of see how the parents interact with you, and also how they interact with their own child as well too. That also are, red lights or green lights as well too.
Love that. Love that. Aaron, I can't believe it. We're like almost at the end of our hour already. This is crazy. I want to make sure to give people information on how to reach you or how to follow you on social media. Now that we've bashed social media for the last few minutes, it still is a great way to connect with people.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
please share that with us.
Sure. So you can find me, Aaron Rusnak. I have actually my own coaching business now. I just started this February. It's to help other coaches become better coaches, because the way I look at it is, if you help coaches become better, they're going to help more people than I could ever help on my own. That is actually at innovationtenniscoaching.com. My cell phone number is 708-471-5416. You can reach me there. You can find me also on LinkedIn at Aaron Rusnak, and also my only real main social media outside of LinkedIn is Instagram, and that's actually Inspire to Be Tennis is the and then it's actually the number 2 and then Be Tennis. So Inspire number 2 and then Be Tennis.
And we'll have all those links in the show notes on parentingaces.com in case you guys missed that. So don't worry. But I love that you're working with other coaches too. I think that's one thing in all the years I've been doing this, have been talking about the importance of mentorship and how even though we're more connected than ever, we're more disconnected than ever somehow. And missing that piece of having a mentor, somebody who has a little more experience, maybe is older, doesn't necessarily have to be older, but that you can bounce ideas off of, go to for, to help hold you accountable for the job you're doing. And I think that, if we could get more people, more coaches, more parents, I mean, that's kind of what Parenting Aces is all about, is being a place for people to come together and hold each other accountable for how we're doing on the parenting side. But I just think from the coaching side, that's been missing at the junior level and at the college level. And I know the ITA has been working hard to kind of reinstitute a mentorship type of program for their member coaches, but we haven't really seen that at the junior level so much.
No, I agree with you. It's something I mentioned to someone the other day. Actually on another podcast, I just said, I never, other than my first coach, Sharon, and then my main coach who developed me, and his name was Chris Kabama. He was my only mentor when I was in my teenage years. After that, everything I had ever achieved as a coach, or even as a player, was all reading books, watching video, asking questions to other coaches. Like when I was playing futures, we'd have a lot of times players coming from other countries with like 5 players to one coach. And I'd literally watch those matches and I'd be asking a coach, like, what are they working on? Like, where's their ranking on now? What are you projecting for them to do? I just love learning. And as you know, if you're a lifelong learner, you're just always trying to, I always feel like if you're just constantly staying relevant and bettering yourself, you're just going to be better for the person across from you. I could go on a tangent of like injuries and stuff, because that was really my circuit career was plagued by injuries. So I was able to really connect with my players who went through injuries because of that. So even at the time, it was really not great, but looking back, it was good because it helped me become a better coach for my own players. But the mentor thing for sure, the USTA just started something this year. I want to say PTR and PTA are doing something this year that I understand. I got something that was, people could, offer time and stuff like that. And I just said, I've been doing this 27 years. I wish I had that. I just fortunately this week I had posted myself. I have actually Dominic Thiem's dad, Wolfgang, is actually going to mentor me. So I'm part of like the thing that JY has, the GPTCA we're part of. And I'm actually going to fly to Austria at some point in these next few weeks or months to spend time with him to kind of be mentored. And I'm really excited because it's just like, one, it's a different part of the country. One, I've never been to, which will be one is a fun experience. But secondly, as you know, every part of the world has different methodology or different approaches to how they do things. And I'm always fascinated. I don't feel like, just like I was saying before, if I'm working with you, there's probably 7 different ways to help you in something. It's just knowing which is the right way for you. So it's like, everyone has a methodology out there, whether it's a federation or a coaching philosophy anyone has. It's, for me personally, it's like, I'm not one ever been a coach going, oh, that's right or wrong. It's more so that may not work for that player, but if it works for that player, what does it matter? As long as that player understands what needs to be done and they get better, that's all that matters, because
Right.
you're impacting the player. So it's, for me, I've never been one, and JY knows this. I'm not one to put anyone down. I do my own thing. I go to my own tune. But yeah, as far as the mentor thing, I think it's much needed because, I said on this one other podcast, I said, you see the percentages of younger coaches staying in this industry is dropped. There's not enough women coaches. There is not enough, coaches of color or ethnicities. I mean, there's so many things. If you just increase just those 2 things alone, the overall ecosystem of our sport thriving and helping all different people walks of life to enjoy this game and be a lifelong participant of this sport is missing. If we do that, it could be such a huge thing. And again, I don't have a magic wand. I don't have all the numbers in front of me. It's just the things I've read and I've seen, and obviously talking to other coaches. And even when I was at the symposium, just seeing that there's some loopholes that, I think they are aware of, but I don't know if we don't really have a plan yet. But I think if we could at least, even like you said, get on some type of mentorship program, because for me, that's what I've been doing the past like 10, 15 years. I've been mentoring other staff members at 2 facilities. I even have one right now who went through Ferris State, who works with me at my one facility, and I mentor him all the time. He's always having me look at his kids, how should, I love that back. I'm really grateful for that, because to me that he respects me enough to get the information. I have a few other coaches also that bounce ideas off of me. And I love that. I think, as when you're interacting with other people, and I think no idea is a bad idea. I think it's just always like, if it's the right approach at the right time, knowing that player, going back to that player, is it the right time to interject that, or we wait a little bit and wait to see how they can problem solve it, or if it's it's time to have that intervene or change, made. So, but
I
yeah, no,
love
I
that.
definitely think that is for sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. Erin, thank you so much for taking time to do our little podcast. It's been a pleasure chatting with you and learning from you today. And again, all of your contact info will be in the show notes at parentingaces.com. So any of you watching or listening, please be sure to check that out and reach out to Erin with any questions or concerns, or he's there. If you want to send video, he'll work with you and your child's coach. He's not looking to take over anything, just offering to help. So I love that.
Yep. You got it. I'm all about the team aspect. It's not about, I've never been an I person in my whole life. And my wife of 26 years knows that I've always been a team player in my job. So I just want to see the game succeed. And if someone needs help out there, I'm willing to help out and give advice. Like I said, or any coaches want to get out there and talk to me. And I just want to see the game survive, and I just want to see everyone love the game, and really want to do it, for their lifetime, and if it involves also their kids, even better.
To my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you next time on Parenting Aces.